What if everything you've been taught about love is a weaponized lie? Imagine a predator not with claws, but with words sharp, calculated, dripping with the venom of false adoration. This is love bombing, a narcissist's deadliest trap disguised as affection. It begins with a deluge, flattery, gifts, relentless attention, all engineered to flood your senses, to drown your skepticism in a chemical tsunami of dopamine. You're not being loved, you're being hunted. The narcissist doesn't see a person. They see a mirror, a void to fill, a puppet to control. They study your insecurities, your unmet needs, your silent cries for validation, and they weaponize them. You're perfect, they whisper, not to uplift you, but to chain you to their illusion. Real love builds. Love bombing destabilizes. It's the difference between a home and a house of cards. One breath, and it collapses. Why do we fall for it? Because we're starved for connection in a fractured world, and they offer a feast, but every bite is laced with poison. Ask yourself, when someone's love feels too intense, too soon, is it passion or predation? The answer could save your life. Let's dissect the anatomy of this illusion. The narcissist's love is not an emotion. It's a strategy, a chess move in a game you didn't realize you were playing. Love bombing operates on a simple, brutal calculus. Overwhelm the target's boundaries until their no dissolves into gratitude. They don't cherish your autonomy. They erase it. Think of it as emotional Stockholm syndrome. You're taught to conflate intensity with intimacy, obsession with devotion. The narcissist script is rehearsed. I've never met anyone like you, they declare, a line tailored to flatter your uniqueness while burying the truth. They say this to everyone. Their gifts are not offerings of care but down payments on future control. Every compliment is a hook, every promise, a cage. Why does this work? Because human beings are wired to seek belonging, and narcissists exploit that vulnerability with surgical precision. They don't love you, they love how you make them feel. Powerful, needed, godlike. Your humanity is irrelevant. You're a prop in their theater of grandiosity. And when you inevitably fail to sustain their impossible fantasy, the script flips. The adoration turns to contempt, the gifts to weapons. The question isn't why do they do it? It's why do we tolerate it? Because in a culture addicted to romance, we've been conditioned to mistake desperation for passion, possession for partnership. The narcissist's greatest ally isn't their charm. It's our collective delusion that love should hurt. But here's the cruelest twist. The trap isn't just sprung by the narcissist. It's co-authored by the victim. Not out of weakness, but biology. Love bombing hijacks the brain's reward system, rewiring it to crave the narcissist's approval like a drug. Dopamine surges with every text, every declaration of soulmate, status, every performative sacrifice. You're not falling in love, you're being addicted. And like any addict, you'll rationalize the escalating cost. When they vanish for days after swearing you're their everything, you blame yourself. When they gaslight you into doubting your reality, you cling tighter, desperate to regain that initial high. This isn't romance, it's chemical warfare. The narcissist knows this. They thrive in the chaos of intermittent reinforcement, where crumbs of affection follow stretches of neglect. You become a lab rat pressing a lever, starving but convinced the next pellet will come. Why? Because admitting the truth that you've been played would shatter your self-concept. It's easier to believe you're unlovable than to face the horrifying alternative. They never loved you at all. And here's the philosophical gut punch. Does the narcissist even exist outside their manipulations? Strip away the mirror they hold up to your desires, and what's left? A hollow figure, parasitic and unmoored, feeding on your light because they have none of their own. You weren't chosen for your worth, you were targeted for your utility. So I ask you, how much of your identity have you handed to someone who sees you as disposable? Reclaiming it starts with one blasphemous thought. What if I am the hero here, not the martyr? Now witness the bait and switch the moment love bombing curdles into control. The narcissist's once effusive praise now carries a sting. "I love you so much," but a backhanded compliment here, a veiled critique there. Slowly, they replace your self-worth with their conditional approval. This is the devaluation phase, where the puppet master reveals the strings. You're no longer the perfect partner. You're a project to fix, a broken thing needing their guidance. How does this happen? Through incremental erosion. A comment about your weight cloaked as concern. A joke about your intelligence that lingers like a bruise. Each dig is calibrated to make you hunger for their earlier adoration, now dangled like a carrot just out of reach. You scramble to earn back their love, not realizing the game is rigged. The goalposts will always move. Here's the brutal truth. Their initial idolization was never about you. It was about setting the stage for your downfall. Narcissists need villains to justify their victimhood, and you've been cast in the role. They gaslight you into believing your boundaries are betrayals, your autonomy a threat. And society? It amplifies the trap. Romantic comedies glorify persistence. Fight for love, while ignoring the cost. When does devotion become delusion? When you're sacrificing your sanity on the altar of their ego. The cycle tightens its grip with a diabolical rhythm. Love bombing, devaluation, discard, repeat. This is the narcissist's symphony of control, composed to keep you trapped in a loop of hope and humiliation. Just as you near breaking point, they reignite the charade. A sudden text, a tearful apology, a bouquet of "I've changed" promises. This isn't reconciliation. It's hoovering, sucking you back into the vortex with the allure of revived affection. Why does it work? Because trauma bonds, the psychological chains forged in cycles of abuse and reward, are stronger than logic. Your nervous system, now wired for their chaos, mistakes anxiety for passion, dread for desire. The narcissist becomes your emotional cartel, creating artificial scarcity. No one will ever love you like I do, and you believe it, not because it's true, but because they've systematically dismantled your trust in yourself. Every hoovering attempt is a test. How much of your dignity will you trade for another hit of their counterfeit love? Here's the chilling paradox. The more they hurt you, the harder you fight to fix things. Why? Because admitting defeat would force you to confront two unbearable truths: that you've been complicit in your own captivity, and that the love you've bled for was never real. The narcissist counts on this. They weaponize your empathy, your resilience, your capacity for forgiveness. All virtues twisted into tools of enslavement. You're not in a relationship. You're in a psychological hostage negotiation where they hold all the power. And the ransom? Your soul. What if the greatest weapon in the narcissist's arsenal isn't their charm, but the silence of a complicit society? We live in a world that romanticizes obsession as devotion, reframes control as protective love, and sells the lie that suffering is the price of passion. How many films glorify the grand gesture, the stalkerish proclamation, the manipulative ultimatum, while branding boundaries as coldness? We've built cultural cathedrals to the myth of fighting for love. But who benefits when endurance becomes enslavement? Narcissists thrive in these blind spots, shielded by collective delusion. They exploit the same societal scripts that equate persistence with virtue, turning your empathy into a leash. Consider this. A stranger follows you home. It's a crime. A narcissist invades your psyche. It's a rom-com. Why do we criminalize trespassers of property but celebrate trespassers of the soul? The answer lies in our fetishization of relentless pursuit, a relic of patriarchal courtship where no was a challenge, not a boundary. This systemic gaslighting normalizes emotional colonization, framing victims as ungrateful for rejecting toxic devotion. And what of the institutions that fail us? Therapy jargon is weaponized. Maybe you're codependent, to shift blame onto the abused, while legal systems recognize bruises but not brainwashing. The narcissist's power is magnified by a society that polices bodies but abandons minds. Here's the uncomfortable truth. We are all accomplices. Every time we dismiss a victim with, but they seemed so nice. Every time we prioritize politeness over protection, we grease the gears of the narcissist's machine. Their predation is enabled by our collective refusal to name evil, to call manipulation what it is: psychological rape. They count on our decorum, our fear of overreacting, our cult of forgiveness that demands victims heal in silence. But what if we revolted? What if we replaced love conquers all with love respects all? Imagine a world where red flags are taught in schools, where emotional literacy dismantles gaslighting, where "I love you" is a vow of service, not a warrant for ownership. This isn't utopian, it's survival. The narcissist fears nothing more than an awakened society, one that replaces fairy tales with firewalls. So I ask you, will you remain a bystander in this war of wills, or become a saboteur of the status quo? The revolution begins when you stop asking, "Why didn't they leave?" and start demanding, "Why weren't they protected?" What happens when the fog lifts? When the narcissist's spell shatters and you're left staring at the scorched earth of your own psyche? This is the reckoning, the moment you realize escape is only the first battle. The war is in the aftermath. Recovery isn't about healing, it's about excavation. Every memory, every gaslit confession, every twisted promise must be sifted through like debris after a bomb blast. You're not picking up pieces, you're learning to distinguish truth from shrapnel. The narcissist's greatest crime isn't the lies they told, but the lies you began to tell yourself. I deserve this. I'm unlovable. I'm nothing without them. These aren't wounds. They're booby traps planted in your mind, rigged to detonate the moment you try to rebuild. So how do you disarm them? By weaponizing the very vulnerability they exploited. That crippling self-doubt? Reverse engineer it. Ask, if I'm so worthless, why did they fight so hard to own me? Their desperation is your evidence you were never the broken one. But here's the rub. Society will rush to sanitize your pain. Forgive and forget. They'll chirp, as if trauma is a stain to scrub out, not a teacher. Don't fall for it. Your rage is sacred. Your distrust is wisdom. That hollow ache where their love once festered? That's not emptiness, it's space. Space to finally hear your own voice, buried under years of their scripted narratives. Rebuilding isn't a return to who you were. It's an exorcism of who they made you become. You'll crave their validation like phantom limb pain, but this is the detox. Withdrawal from their approval is proof it's working. And when the world tries to sell you another fairy tale, love should hurt, love should sacrifice. Laugh, then burn the script. True power lies in rewriting the story, not as victim or survivor but as architect. The narcissist taught you to see love as a cage. Now build it as a sanctuary. Let your boundaries be unbreakable, not walls but moats, keeping predators adrift while letting light flood in. They wanted you to believe your fire was dangerous. Now let it raise their lies to ash. You are not a lesson they taught the world. They are the lesson you survived. So rise not in spite of them, but because the universe carved you a throne from the wreckage. The narcissist's endgame was always your annihilation. Joke's on them. You're not a phoenix. You're the inferno. What fuels the narcissist's relentless need to conquer? Peel back the layers of grandiosity, and you'll find not a monster, but a void. A howling abyss of shame they've spent a lifetime papering over with your adoration. Love bombing isn't passion. It's panic. A desperate scramble to outrun their own insignificance. Think of them as emotional black holes. They devour light not out of malice, but because their hunger is infinite, their core a vacuum no amount of praise can fill. Every flattering word they spew is a confession. I need you to need me, because I cannot bear to face myself. They don't crave love. They demand worship, a congregation to validate their fragile godhood. But here's the tragic irony. The more they win, the emptier they become. Each discarded victim is a mirror reflecting their own inadequacy, which is why they must keep hunting new supply, new validation, new lies to temporarily silence the echo of their own worthlessness. Why does this matter to you? Because understanding their brokenness is the key to breaking their spell. Narcissists are master illusionists, projecting strength while rotting from within. Their cruelty isn't a sign of power. It's the thrashing of a drowning soul. When they belittle you, they're whispering to themselves, "If I can make you small, maybe I'll feel big." Their love bombing wasn't a gift. It was a debt they never intended to repay. Recognize this, and their God complex crumbles. You see the scared child behind the tyrant, the insecurity beneath the swagger. But don't mistake this for pity, they will weaponize that too. Compassion is wasted on those who see kindness as weakness. This is the ultimate reframe. Their obsession with control reveals their terror of chaos. Their need to dominate, a silent scream against their own irrelevance. They don't fear your independence. They fear your indifference. The moment you realize their entire persona is a house of cards trembling at the slightest breeze. So let them starve. Withhold the supply they crave, your pain, your attention, your struggle. Walk away not with hatred, but with the cold clarity of a scientist observing a failed experiment. They'll label you heartless, but that's just the sound of their hunger hitting bedrock. The narcissist's curse is eternal dissatisfaction. Yours is the power to walk free. You'll never fix them, because they're not broken. They're empty. And emptiness cannot be filled, only avoided. Let that truth liberate you. Their game was rigged because they had nothing real to offer. Love bombing was never about you, it was about silencing the void within them. Now ask yourself, why let someone else's abyss dictate your worth? You are not their remedy. You are not their reflection. You are the dawn they'll never witness, too busy chasing yesterday's shadows. Leave them to their darkness. Your light was never theirs to claim. What if the ultimate rebellion isn't revenge, but radical self-ownership? The narcissist's playbook relies on one assumption, that you'll keep playing their game. But what happens when you rewrite the rules? Imagine turning their tactics into tinder for your own liberation. Every lie they weaponized becomes a map to your buried strength. Every devaluation, a mirror reflecting their own inadequacy. This isn't about fighting them, it's about outgrowing them. You think they fear your anger? No, they fear your apathy, your refusal to dance to their script. The moment you stop seeking closure from someone who thrives on chaos, their power evaporates. They're left shouting into a void they created, while you walk away with the only trophy that matters, your unbroken spirit. But how? Start by weaponizing truth. Narcissists build empires on delusion, so drag their lies into the light. Document their manipulations not to convince them, but to armor yourself against gaslighting. Create a ledger of their contradictions, a dossier of broken promises. When doubt creeps in, consult your evidence. Cold, hard, unassailable. This isn't paranoia, it's strategy. They want you emotionally raw. Become clinically precise. Treat their mind games like lab experiments. Observe, analyze, disengage. They'll escalate, desperate to provoke the emotional reactions that feed them. Starve them. Let their tantrums echo in an empty theater. Here's the pivot. Transfer the energy you spent decoding their moods into decoding your own potential. For every hour you once wasted agonizing over their approval, invest in mastering a skill, rebuilding a relationship they poisoned, or nurturing a dream they mocked. They hijacked your narrative. Now hijack their ruthlessness and redirect it inward, not as self-criticism, but as disciplined self-creation. Become a fortress of purpose, your goals so towering they dwarf the narcissist's petty dramas. When they try to hoover, hit them with the ultimate insult, indifference. Not the silent treatment, but the thunderous silence of a life too full to notice their noise. And what of justice? It won't come from their downfall. They're already in hell, chained to a treadmill of endless hunger. True justice is your metamorphosis. Let their name become a footnote in your epic, a cautionary tale eclipsed by your resurgence. The world will whisper, "How did they survive?" You'll smile, knowing the answer. By realizing survival was never the goal, dominance was. Not over the narcissist, but over the parts of yourself they tried to murder. You've now got a PhD in deception, a spine forged in betrayal, and a BS detector sharper than any blade. Wield these not for war, but as a vaccine against future predators. The final question isn't will they return? It's what will you build from the ruins? Narcissists are arsonists of the soul, but you're an architect. Lay each brick of your new life with the mortar of earned wisdom. Let your boundaries be electrified, your standards non-negotiable, your love a guarded citadel offered only to those who've earned the password. Respect. The narcissist's greatest fear? That you'll become untouchable. Not through armor, but through audacity. The audacity to thrive without their permission, to love without their poison, to exist as a monument to everything they could never destroy. So here's the final truth, sharp enough to cut through the bullshit. The antidote to love bombing isn't skepticism, it's sovereignty. Narcissists prey on the collective myth that love requires surrender, that connection demands compromise of the self. But what if we redefine love not as a transaction, but as a collision of two intact universes? No mergers, no conquests, just mutual orbit. To escape the trap, you must become ungovernable. Not cynical, not closed, but rooted so deeply in your worth that flattery feels mundane and manipulation feels clumsy. They can't mirror what they can't fathom. A person who needs no saving. This is the endgame. Building a self so bulletproof that love bombing doesn't dazzle, it bores. Imagine staring into their fiery declarations of destiny and replying, "That's nice. What else you got?" Watch their script unravel when their theatrics meet your quiet certainty. Narcissists feed on drama. Starve them with stillness. They crave chaos. Hand them zen. The moment you refuse to conflate love with intensity, you expose their game for the hollow pantomime it is. They'll flee not because you fought, but because you failed to react. But the revolution doesn't stop with you. This is about legacy. Every time you reject their toxic blueprint, you inoculate the next generation. Teach children that love isn't a fever dream. It's a safe house. Show them how to spot a predator's hunger beneath the candy-coated words. Replace fairy tales with forensic audits of motive. Why is this person rushing? What's their end game? Arm them with the ultimate weapon. The question, what's in it for them? Repeated until the narcissist's mask slips. The narcissist wanted you to believe this was your shame. Flip the script. Wear your survival as a crown. Let your scars be lighthouses for others lost in the same storm. And when society whispers, "Don't air dirty laundry," roar back, "This isn't laundry, it's evidence." Your story isn't a confession. It's a fucking manifesto. A rallying cry for anyone still mistaking poison for passion. They told you love was a cage. Prove it's a master key, one that unlocks not partners, but power. The kind that doesn't beg, "Choose me," but declares, "I am already chosen by myself." Let the narcissist rot in their hall of mirrors, forever chasing reflections. You've outgrown their funhouse. Step into the brutal, beautiful daylight of reality, where love isn't a weapon but a witness to your wholeness, your resilience, your refusal to shrink. The curtain closes on their drama. The spotlight's yours now. What will you do with it?